What if the line between a human and a wild animal isn't, biology, but simply a matter of willpower? Welcome to today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me. It's a pretty terrifying question to start with.
It really is. I mean, you usually walk into a natural history museum and feel this profound sense of order, right?
Oh, absolutely. Everything is categorized.
Exactly. The human exhibits are over here, showcasing ancient tools and civilization. And then, safely separated behind thick glass, you have the taxidermy, the wolves, the hawks, the bears.
It creates a very comforting taxonomy for us. Like
Yeah.
we are securely on this side of the glass with our opposable thumbs and our logic, while they remain on that side with their fangs and their pure, unfiltered instincts.
We like that clean line. But our mission today is to explore a deeply unsettling concept that basically shatters that glass.
Yeah, it does.
We're looking at the ancient, terrifying idea of shapeshifting. Specifically, the theory that human and animal consciousness might not be separate at all, but rather exist in a very blurry, overlapping borderland.
And we are pulling all of this from a single, incredibly rich source today. It's an excerpt from a 1934 piece of weird fiction titled The Drone, written by Abraham Merritt.
Such a classic era for this kind of writing.
It really is. The setup places us in a classic 1930s explorers club. You have four distinct minds gathered around a table. There's a botanist, an ethnologist, a highly skeptical archaeologist, and a poet who also works as a museum curator.
Okay, let's unpack this because while it sounds like the beginning of, a cozy campfire ghost story, the conversation almost immediately abandons folklore.
Right. They don't stay in the realm of myths for long.
They don't. They dive into these fierce, unnerving psychological theories, and they share two supposed firsthand accounts that will genuinely make you question where the human mind ends and the beast begins.
The whole debate is ignited by Karanak, the ethnologist. He starts challenging Winston, the skeptic, about how we interpret ancient cultures. Karanak brings up the Egyptian pantheon. He argues that the Egyptians didn't just randomly stick animal heads on human bodies for their gods like Anubis the jackal or Kefir the beetle.
Just to be decorative, basically.
Exactly. He believes these ancient societies were acknowledging an immeasurably ancient borderland between human and animal consciousness.
But he's not suggesting literal biological shape-shifting at this point in the conversation, is he?
No, he's proposing a psychological theory.
Right. He argues that everyone has a bit of the beast submerged in their personality. Like some people are fundamentally rat-like or horse-like. There are predatory hawk-faced people and secretive serpent-like people.
They've all met people like that, right?
Oh, for sure.
But his terrifying proposition is that sometimes this animal element isn't just a quirky personality trait. It can become so intensely developed that it actually submerges the human part of our consciousness.
Wow. So how does that even look to an observer?
Well, Karanak illustrates this by describing a highly sensitive friend who would occasionally experience what he called a swift haze.
A swift haze.
Yeah, this friend would be on a crowded subway or at a theater, and suddenly this mental fog would wash over his vision. When the haze cleared a second later, he wouldn't be looking at human commuters anymore.
What would he see?
He would see literal rats, foxes, wolves, and serpents dressed in human clothes. Just a flash, and then the illusion would break.
Oh, wow. I have to put myself in the shoes of Winston, the skeptic, here. I mean, isn't this just an extreme version of a metaphor?
How do you mean?
Today, we constantly do this kind of vibe reading. We casually describe a ruthless CEO as a predatory shark or, a sneaky coworker as a weasel.
That's very true.
Isn't Karenak's friend just like a doctor who is so highly trained to look for illness that he only sees patients as their diseases? He's recognizing predatory or skittish behavior, and his brain is just translating that into a vivid visual metaphor.
What's fascinating here is how this psychological explanation is a desperate attempt to rationalize ancient mythology for the modern scientific mind. And Winston actually brings up the exact same skepticism you just did.
He pushes back.
He aggressively pushes back on Karanak. He demands to know if modern science is finally trying to explain the myth of Circe.
The ancient enchantress who turned men into pigs.
Exactly. Winston essentially asks, do you literally believe a human skeleton can instantly sprout fur, hooves, and fangs?
And Karenak's response to that is just chilling. Because he says no, the skeleton doesn't change. The physical body remains human.
Right, the biology stays the same.
But the animal soul within that person becomes so dominant, maybe aided by a dark ritual or intense fear or certain potions, that it projects outward. It violently overwhelms the observer's senses. The person doesn't physically turn into a wolf. They force you to see the wolf.
It's a localized, targeted hallucination projected by sheer force of will.
That is wild.
The victim's brain receives such a strong signal of pure predatory animal intent that it overrides the optic nerve. The brain hallucinates the physical form of the beast to match the overwhelming psychological presence it's feeling.
Which is, it's a brilliant, neat little theory. It keeps the monster safely locked inside the realm of psychology. Exactly.
It's safe.
But this theoretical debate is what prompts Hewitt, the botanist, to finally speak up. He's been listening to them try to put shape-shifting into this neat psychological box, and he decides to share a field report from his time in Abyssinia that completely shatters that box.
Oh, this story is intense.
Because what happens when a psychological illusion leaves behind physical evidence?
Right. So Hewitt's account introduces us to the hyena priest. During an expedition, his local headman is basically paralyzed by fear over a village priest who is rumored to turn into a hyena during the full moon to hunt humans.
And Hewitt is a man of empirical science, right?
Very much so. He decides the best way to handle this is to confront the priest directly and shut down the superstition before it ruins his expedition.
How does a scientist even approach a confrontation like that without looking, ridiculous?
Well, Hewitt tries to assert dominance through intimidation. But the sensory details of the encounter immediately put him on the defensive. He finds this priest, and the man is wearing a massive, uncured hyena skin draped over his shoulders, with the beast's grinning head resting right above his own. And Hewitt notes that the priest's actual teeth have been filed down to sharp, jagged points.
Making them virtually indistinguishable from the hyena's fangs.
Exactly. But the most overpowering detail is the smell. The priest reeks of this stomach-turning, visceral scent of a wild, predatory hyena.
It's pure psychological warfare. The priest is stacking the deck with visual and olfactory cues.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
So Hewitt taps his rifle, tells the priest he has a habit of shooting hyenas, and just walks away.
confident.
But the psychological infection has already taken hold. That night happens to be the full moon. The atmosphere in Hewitt's camp is suffocating. He is sitting by the fire with his terrified headman, rifles loaded, staring into the dark bush.
The climax of Hewitt's story builds such incredible tension. The moon rises, and abruptly, the naked priest is just standing there at the edge of the clearing about 100 feet away.
Just watching him.
The moonlight is catching those oiled, filed teeth. And then that exact swift haze that Karanak described back in the Explorers Club suddenly washes over the entire scene.
It's that visual fog. And when the haze clears a moment later, the human priest is gone. Standing in his exact place is a massive hyena.
But the terror really lies in its posture, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it is not acting like a wild animal. It is standing perfectly upright on its hind legs. Its forelegs are crossed casually over its shaggy chest.
That visual is just horrifying.
It grins directly at Hewitt. Then, maintaining eye contact, it deliberately walks 6 paces forward on 2 legs, drops down to all 4s, and vanishes seamlessly into the surrounding bush.
Okay, putting my skeptic hat firmly back on for a second. Couldn't this entire sequence be exactly what Winston suggested earlier?
The vast hallucination theory.
Yeah. We have a terrifying, unfamiliar environment. We have a native headman feeding Hewitt extreme fear. We have the hypnotic suggestion from the afternoon's intense confrontation, the sensory overload of the smell, and the filed teeth.
And the flickering, unreliable firelight.
Exactly. Isn't this just textbook mass hallucination? The brain expects to see a monster, so it pastes one in the shadows.
Winston argues that exact point in the story. He immediately dismisses Hewitt's account as severe hypnotism. But Hewitt destroys the hallucination theory with chilling, undeniable physical evidence.
The mud.
Yes. After the beast retreats, Hewitt shakes off the paralysis, grabs a flashlight, and walks over to the exact spot where the creature stood. The ground there is soft, wet mud.
And a hallucination can't interact with wet mud.
The footprints tell a completely impossible story. Hewitt finds the prints of a man crawling out of the bush on all 4s. He clearly identifies human handprints and human footprints. Then he finds 2 human footprints close together, marking the exact spot where the man stood up. But stepping forward from those human feet are the massive paws of a hyena.
And it isn't just a chaotic scramble of prints either.
No, not at all. Hewitt finds 6 distinct, enormous paw prints, evenly spaced, matching the exact 6 paces the beast took while walking upright on its hind legs.
That is just, wow.
And after those 6 upright paces, the spoor changes to the unmistakable slinking four-legged gait of a heavy hyena heading off into the brush. There are no human footprints retreating.
So the human being walked forward and literally left the physical tracks of a beast in the mud.
Yes. And the horror of that night doesn't end with tracks. A man in their camp is killed shortly after. His throat is neatly, powerfully crushed, and his body is dragged away.
Surrounding the victim's body are the tracks of an unusually large hyena, right?
Right. And Hewitt tracks this specific beast to a nearby watering pool. The heavy hyena tracks go right up to the water's edge. But leaving the pool, heading back toward the priest's village, there are no hyena tracks at all.
Just the tracks of a naked human foot?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the detail that genuinely gave me goosebumps, the human footprints heading back are missing the left big toe.
Which was the exact, highly distinctive footprint of that specific priest.
I want you to really put yourself in Hewitt's shoes in that moment. Your modern logical brain is screaming that this has to be a trick. A guy in an animal suit, a hallucination, a hypnotic suggestion.
But you're staring down at wet mud.
You are looking at a human footprint that seamlessly morphs into a massive predator's paw, and you have a dead man in your camp with his throat crushed. The physical reality of the mud and the blood defies the hallucination theory entirely.
It proves that the Borderland isn't just a psychological fog. It actually bleeds into the physical world. It alters reality.
It does.
And just when you think the boundaries of this concept can't be pushed any further, MacLeod, the poet and museum curator, enters the debate. If Hewitt proved it was physical, MacLeod tries to explain the actual mechanism behind how a human body could rewrite its own shape.
MacLeod takes Karenak's psychological theory and expands it to a massive cosmic scale. He proposes that we are looking at this all wrong. It's not just about humans having an animal side.
What's his angle?
He argues that all life on Earth is actually one single, universal thinking force. Trees, beasts, flowers, humans, we are all just different, temporary cells in one massive, living entity.
So it's all connected.
Deeply connected. And because every living thing is woven from the exact same vital force, under certain extreme conditions, the parts are entirely interchangeable.
To illustrate this universal life force, MacLeod tells the story of his college roommate, Ferguson. They had a very unconventional professor who would challenge his students to stretch their consciousness.
Right. It wasn't just a creative writing exercise.
No, he wouldn't just ask them to imagine being an animal. He demanded they write from the exact, literal sensory perspective of a hunted fox, or the worm's eye view of a garden.
And Ferguson was unnervingly adept at this practice. He wasn't just observing an animal and writing about a hawk. He was channeling the hawk.
Channeling it.
He explained to the cloud that he would set his mind intensely on an animal, and eventually his consciousness would slip entirely outside of his human shell and reside inside the beast's mind. During college, he insisted his body remain perfectly human, but his spirit was completely untethered.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the story fast-forwards 30 years, Ferguson unexpectedly shows up at MacLeod's office, and the physical description of him is just pure nightmare fuel.
It really is.
The Ferguson from college was dark-haired, wiry, with a strong, square chin. The man sitting in the office 30 years later has fundamentally, genetically changed.
And the specific mutations are deeply unsettling because they aren't mammalian. His dark hair has transformed into a fine golden fuzz that covers his head. His face is completely flattened out, his jawline and chin receding into his neck.
Oh, man.
And he is wearing these massive, oversized, dark glasses that give his face the distinct, bulbous impression of a pair of compound insect eyes.
When they shake hands, MacLeod experiences this visceral revulsion. He notes that Ferguson's hand felt less like a human's flesh and more like the rigid, segmented foot of an insect, completely covered in that same golden yellow fuzz.
Even his voice is different, isn't it?
Yeah, even the way Ferguson speaks has altered. Beneath his words, there is this constant, muffled humming and buzzing vibrating in his throat.
Ferguson invites MacLeod to visit his home in New Jersey, which turns out to be an expansive apiary. But the house itself has been heavily modified to suit its owner.
How so?
It is continually lit by a dim, golden white light. The doorways have been structurally altered to be unusually low and broad. Walking inside feels exactly like entering the interior of a massive hive.
And Ferguson's behavior has become entirely non-human by this point, right? I mean, he refuses to eat meat, consuming a diet consisting strictly of honey, mead, and fruit.
Strictly hive food.
Yes. He has become completely terrifyingly obsessed with the life cycle of a drone bee. He monologues about the drone's life with this religious reverence, how they do absolutely no labor, they are constantly fed and groomed by their worker sisters, and they spend their days simply darting through the sun.
But the absolute pinnacle of their existence is what he calls the nuptial flight.
The mating flight with the Virgin Queen.
Exactly. Ferguson describes this event as a flaming ecstasy. He talks about pouring raw life into the queen with every frantic stroke of his wings, cheating death right at the fiery, violent core of life.
Even though it kills them.
Right, he knows that the physical act of mating kills the drone instantly, ripping its body apart. But he doesn't view it as a death sentence. He views it as the ultimate cosmic rapture.
Hearing this, my mind immediately goes to the concept of an extreme method actor who gets completely dangerously lost in a role, unable to find their way back to their own personality.
Or someone immersed in a hyper-realistic VR simulation for so long that their brain literally stops processing the physical world.
Exactly. The lingering question here is, did Ferguson's mind simply snap? Did a profound delusion cause severe psychosomatic changes to his body? Or did his extreme mental focus actually allow him to tap into that shared universal life force McLeod described, bending his human DNA to match the insect consciousness he was channeling?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of the universal life force, the climax of McLeod's story answers that question with terrifying clarity. As they are talking in the hive house, a faint, rhythmic roaring begins outside the window.
The swarm.
Yes. It steadily grows louder and more oppressive, the deafening sound of hundreds of thousands of bees violently swarming.
The nuptial flight is beginning.
Ferguson's reaction is entirely involuntary. He leaps from his chair toward the window. A violent tremor shakes his entire body, which quickly accelerates into a rapid pulsing rhythm.
Oh my God.
He stretches his arms straight out, and they begin to vibrate, beating up and down with such intense speed that they physically blur, mimicking the wings of a bee trying to achieve liftoff. His human speech completely devolves into a pure, deafening buzzing and humming.
He is literally throwing himself against the window screen, frantically trying to break through and join the swarm outside.
And physical exertion is too much. He suddenly collapses backward, completely dead.
Yeah.
When his body hits the floor, those thick, oversized dark glasses are knocked away from his face. McLeod looks down, expecting to see human eyes, but Ferguson has two immense, black, multifaceted eyes of a bee staring blankly up at the ceiling.
And it doesn't stop there.
The true horror of the universal life force theory manifests in the next few seconds. As McLeod leans in to check for a pulse, Ferguson's dead jaw slowly drops open. From deep within his throat, between his human lips, the head of a massive, impossibly handsome drone bee emerges.
That is just repulsive.
Its antennae are twitching and wavering. It crawls entirely out of his mouth, rests for a moment on his dead lips to vibrate its wings, and takes flight. It furiously circles McLeod's head before flying to the torn window screen and desperately forcing its way out to join the swarm.
And McLeod actually helps it escape, right? Ripping the screen further with a knife. The drone vanishes into the cloud of bees. But the most unsettling detail of this entire narrative, the piece of evidence that truly cements the mechanics of this horror, is what happens to Ferguson's physical body immediately after the bee escapes the room.
The reversion.
Yes. The moment the drone clears the window, McLeod looks back down at Ferguson's corpse on the floor. All of the physical insect mutations are simply gone.
Just gone.
The immense black insect eyes have vanished, replaced by the normal blue human eyes McLeod remembered from their college days. The bizarre golden fuzz covering his skin is gone, replaced by his natural dark hair. His hands are no longer rigid and fuzzy. They are white, sinewy, completely hairless human hands.
The beast physically vacated the shell. Whatever consciousness, whatever vital animal force had hijacked Ferguson's physical form and warped it for 30 years, literally took flight and joined the hive.
Leaving the human body behind.
And once that overriding animal departed, the human body simply snapped back to its natural genetic blueprint. It proves McLeod's theory that the human form is just clay, easily molded by whatever force is steering the consciousness.
So, what does this all mean? We've traveled from Kernek's theory of a purely psychological swift haze on a modern subway to the undeniable, terrifying physical footprints of the hyena priest in the mud of Abyssinia, and finally to Ferguson literally shedding his human DNA to achieve the flaming ecstasy of the hive.
It perfectly synthesizes the core tension of this entire deep dive. The source material masterfully forces us to balance on a knife's edge. We are left asking if shape-shifting is merely a trick of an overstressed mind.
Right.
Is it mass hallucination, hypnotic suggestion, and sensory overload, as the skeptic Winston desperately needs to believe to protect his worldview? Or is it physical evidence that consciousness itself is entirely fluid?
That if the human mind is pushed to the absolute limit, if you surrender completely to that shared universal life force, the supposedly rigid boundaries of flesh, bone, and genetics simply melt away.
Exactly. It makes you think deeply about Karenak's initial idea that every single one of us has an animal counterpart submerged in our subconscious. That somewhere inside of you, the listener, right now, there's a hawk, an owl, a serpent, or a wolf just waiting in the dark.
We spend our entire lives, and we have built our entire civilization around the constant effort to suppress those animal instincts. We pave over the wilderness, we create complex legal systems, and we put the stuffed animals safely behind thick glass in museums to continuously prove to ourselves that we are fundamentally different. We tell ourselves that we are the ones in control.
But if our minds and imaginations are actually powerful enough to shape our physical reality, as Ferguson's college professor warned, what happens to us when we finally stop fighting it?
What happens if, just for a singular moment, we fully surrender to the beast we've spent our entire lives locking in the basement of our own minds? Would the thick glass in the museum actually hold us back? Or would we, like Ferguson, find out in the most terrifying way possible that the glass was never really there to begin with?
A chilling thought to leave you with.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the Borderland. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.